So in today's episode of Off Topic Talks, I've got a ring light now, which means I'm an official influencer. I'm much more legit. I don't know how to properly set the brightness or the hue so that it's optimal, but we're just going to play around with it, which literally means that whatever it ends up being on that given day is how the lighting is going to be, and it'll likely just be better, generally. But there'll be little rhyme or reason behind it, because I don't really know what I'm doing, but I know that I have a ring light set up, and that makes me official. So 4 questions in today's off-topic talks. The first one is, when should I start using wraps, straps, sleeves? Now, I don't use wraps or sleeves, so I'm probably not the best person to ask on this. However, generally speaking, when it comes to all supportive equipment, you don't want to use it until you absolutely need to, and if you are using it, usually you're using it with your maximal loads. Now, this is not an absolute rule, however, it is generally accepted. When it comes to straps, however, I do use straps, and I suggest lifters use them if they are incorporating heavy pulls during which their grip will prove to be the limiting factor, and their intent is not to strengthen their grip with set exercise. Their intent is to prioritize the application of stress across larger muscle groups, typically with pulls being your glutes, hams, lower back as primary. As an example, if you're doing heavier conventional deadlifts, then you might want to employ straps on your top end sets to ensure that you can hit the numbers that you're aiming to hit without your grip strength being your limiting factor that leads to you potentially missing the lift and consequently not being able to apply the desired stress or manage the appropriate volume and intensity for that training session. Now, it is worth noting that if you're prepping for a competition within which straps are unreasonable to use, which is going to be almost every legitimate powerlifting competition, then you might want to ensure that you're prioritizing a hook grip setup if you're trying to acclimate in preparation for that competition and you pull double overhand. You definitely don't want to practice with straps, as you'll be underprepared when it comes time to get on the platform. Question number 2 is, do I have any fitness idols? No, not really. I tend not to idolize others. However, there are quite a few individuals, that being athletes, influencers, coaches alike, whom I hold in high regard, but not that I idolize. Question number 3 is, how long have I been working out for? Generally, probably since about 14, 15 years old, when I started doing the typical push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, etc. Lifting weights since about 17, 18. Prioritizing strength as opposed to aesthetics since about 22, maybe 21. And then strength training properly maybe for the past 2 to 3 years. However, even that's debatable, considering, as is often the case. In fact, I just touched on this exact topic in an interview I did the other day, where somebody said, if I could go back and change my training, what would I change? And I said, probably almost everything, considering that when you look back, if you're not throwing up in your mouth just a little bit when you review the approaches that you used to employ in the weight room and under the bar, then you probably haven't learned all that much. And obviously, it's not going to be 100% of the things you did. However, looking back to how I trained when I was 18, 19 years old, yeah, I would say I'm generally disgusted with these strategies that I consistently employed. So training properly, as of my current perspective, probably the past 3 years, and that's being generous. And I'm sure that looking back 4 years in the future to this point now, I will probably think that much of what I'm doing currently could be improved upon. And the 4th question is, what are my favorite squat accessories? Now, this is a tough question because I don't really have any favorites, as training itself is generally not all that enjoyable, because if you're doing it right, then you're prioritizing the exercises that are highlighting your individual weak points and sticking points, and usually those are uncomfortable because they are highlighting a weakness that you might have, and so the enjoyment factor goes down considerably. And so what tends to be my favorite is not all that enjoyable, and they're my favorite specifically because they're going to help build up my foundation and push my line when it comes to top end physical capacity. So it's like a catch-22 because the exercises I enjoy most because of the outcome are the ones that I enjoy least during. But when it comes to squat accessories, there's very few that I don't like. I have a love-hate relationship with training in so much as I love everything to do with training as it drives desirable outcomes. However, in the moment, I don't really like anything all that much. So there's that. That's a wrap on this episode of Off Topic Talks. If you have any general questions, curiosities that you'd like to pass my way, feel free to comment on the video or send me a private message. And if it's a topic that I can expand upon, you can bet that in an upcoming episode, I most certainly will.